So you remember a while back, I'm trying to think, was it 2 years ago? Was it 3 years ago? Was, somewhere around there, that time frame. I could have swore I remember reading that the too big to fail banks, there's two or three of them specifically, didn't quite pass the sniff test in that they didn't have a good plan that if some bad things financially happened to the bank, how would they deal with it? And the Federal Reserve itself led this, whatever, not really an investigation, but led this process of figuring out which banks are and would be in trouble those who would be in trouble needed to have a better plan of action. And I remember them saying that what they had currently wasn't up to snuff, and they needed to revise it and change it and come up with something better. And I am almost certain it was JP Morgan Chase. That, my friends, is the sound of 410-degree oven ready for my pizza. Stand by 1 second. I'm going to pause this. And I'm back. I can't look and find you specifically what I'm talking about, but I'm sure it happened. And again, I'm pretty sure it was JP Morgan again. If not, for some reason, it was another too big to fail bank. Doesn't really matter. But I'm pretty sure it was JP Morgan. So I'm reading this. There's an article on this wallstreetonparade.com. And sure enough, the Federal Reserve has sent another letter to JP Morgan essentially stating what I just said. You don't have any kind of wind down plan, backup plan, whatever, should you fall into some financial turmoil, some trouble. That's not going to fly, so we need you to work on that. Well, hold on. I thought you already said that like 2 years ago. Again, I know what I read back then. Yesterday, and again, this was 3 days ago. Sorry about that. Yesterday, the Federal Reserve released a 19-page letter that it and the FDIC had issued to Jamie Dimon, the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, on April 12th as a result of its failure to present a credible plan for winding itself down if the bank failed. I thought these banks were too big to fail. I guess they're not. I guess they were meant to fail after all, when the timing was right. Wow. The letter carried frightening passages and large blocks of redacted material in critical areas, instilling in any careful reader a sense of panic about the U.S. financial system. Hold the phone. Barack, yellow. Can I speak to Barack? Yeah, the president. Yeah. How you doing, sir? Good? Yeah. Listen, I just read that Jamie Dimon got a letter for JP Morgan Chase that they don't have a wind down plan, and it's scaring the hell out of the FDIC and the Fed, as well as many people reading this. My question was that I know we peddle fiction from time to time, but is the FDIC and the Federal Reserve peddling fiction right now? Remember that one? Anybody that says the U.S. economy has not recovered is peddling fiction. Anybody that believes the election system, and delegate system most importantly, in America is definitely of democratic stature, is peddling fiction. Democratic as in democracy. But you know what? Delegates, raise your hand if you're voting for Trump. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that's not good. All right, thanks. Your services are no longer needed. Take care. Those of you who want Kasich or Lion Ted, as they call him, you guys can stay. That actually happened, by the way. But on to this for the time being. A rational observer of Wall Street's serious hubris might have expected some key elements of this letter to make it into the business press. New York Times, Financial Times, somewhere. A mere 8 years ago, the U.S. experienced a complete meltdown of its financial system, leading to the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. President Obama and regulators have been assuring us over these intervening 8 years that things are under control as a result of the Dodd-Frank financial reform legislation. Yellow, Mr. Obama there? Yeah, it's me. I know we just hung up. I just caught something else. You got a second to talk? No, not about peddling fiction. No, this is different. You said that the last 8 years, things are getting under control due to the Dodd-Frank Act, right? Yeah, okay. Like, almost all of it was gutted and repealed off through legislation afterwards, essentially. So, I'm confused. Hello? Hung up on me. That's about how that conversation would go. But according to the letter the Fed and FDIC issued on April 12th to JP Morgan Chase, the country's largest bank with over $2 trillion in assets and $51 trillion in notional amounts of derivatives, things are decidedly not under control. I have to ask, how is it even possible? $2 trillion in assets and $51 trillion in notional amounts of derivatives. How can it even be possible? How can you have anything 51 trillion when you only have 2 trillion in assets? That would essentially, if that's an asset, then it'd be 53 trillion in assets. JP Morgan's largest bank in the world, 53 trillion in assets. No, it's 2 trillion in assets and 51 trillion in these derivatives, which are weapons of financial mass destruction. Or financial weapons of mass destruction. However you'd like to say that. How is this even possible? How do they do this? It doesn't make any sense. But the number's there. At the top of page 11, the federal regulators reveal that they have identified a deficiency. JP Morgan, can I talk? Jamie Dimon, you're a new billionaire, right? First time? Yeah, good job, buddy. Listen. All I think about is Friday, the movie Friday again, the first one. Debo, can I talk to you for a second? Pop's tripping. He want me to ask you for my bike back. You know I wouldn't trip. What bike? The beach cruiser. The one I let you have 2 or 3 weeks ago. What I've been asking you about. Oh, that bike. It's right over here, homie. I can see Jamie Dimon right now. Yo, Jamie. FDIC's tripping. They want me to ask you about this deficiency we just found. You know I wouldn't trip. What deficiency? The one we bailed you out on 8 years ago. The one taxpayers gave you all the money on. Oh, that deficiency. It's right over here, homie. I didn't know you wanted to go down that road again. Yeah, it's kind of like it's both of ours. We'll just keep it over at your place. Because that's where those stinky, rotten derivatives belong. So before I interrupted myself with that, at the top of the page 11, the federal regulators revealed that they have identified a deficiency in JP Morgan's wind-down plan, which, if not properly addressed, could, quote, pose serious adverse effects to the financial stability of the United States. And they say, why didn't JP Morgan's board of directors or its legions of lawyers catch this? It's important to parse the phrasing of that sentence. The federal regulators didn't say JP Morgan could pose a threat to its shareholders or Wall Street or the markets. It said the potential threat was to the financial stability of the United States. Now that's too big to fail. That statement should strike fear into even the likes of presidential candidate Hillary Bozo Clinton, who has been tilting at the shadows and shadow banks while buying into the Paul Krugman nonsense that Dodd-Frank financial reform is working. when it comes to the behemoth banks on Wall Street. How could one bank, even one as big as and global as JP Morgan, bring down the whole financial stability of the United States? Because at the U.S. Treasury's Office of Financial Research, or OFR, has explained in detail and plotted in pictures 5 big banks in the United States that have high contagion risk to each other. Which bank poses the highest contagion risk? JP Morgan. And I'd like to share that picture with you, if you don't mind. And it's right here. As you can see, we have JP Morgan right there in the middle, Bank of America Corporation, and Goldman Sachs, and some other small ones which aren't labeled. And then below that, I believe we have Wells Fargo Corporation, and a whole bunch of little dots surrounding that sucker. So as you can see, this is a perfect little diagram here, chart, that shows you what I was talking about, or what other people talk about when they say these derivatives are daisy chained from one bank to the next bank to the next bank, because if they fail, those banks have to insure basically those. They don't have to. They are insuring those derivatives through these products called credit default swaps. And credit default swaps aren't called insurance, because if they were called insurance, they'd have to abide by some different regulation. And we're too big to fail banks. We don't have time for regulation. That's nonsense. So they all have credit default swaps with insurance companies and banks and all this stuff. So like you saw in 2008, it was time to pay the piper. We had some contracts go bad. AIG Insurance, we need you to bail us out to the tune of almost $300 billion or whatever it was, 280, somewhere around there. AIG, listen, we don't even have sort of that kind of money. Like, not even a smidgen of that. And who is it owed to? The big banks. Congress, we need a bailout, TARP fund, and this and that, and off-balance sheet crap at the Federal Reserve, and then on-balance sheet crap at the Federal Reserve. And that's how that went. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet is massive all of a sudden. Not all of a sudden. It's been that way, but it's been absurdly high to levels it's never before been. Time for pizza. Stop that. Jay Snip's in the middle of the video. So, the bottom line here, I think we're getting ready to see a massive bailout coming, which is why they said this bank is too big to fail. You don't have a systematic wind down. And I got news for you, FDIC and Fed. They cannot and will not ever have a wind down scenario. That's the plan. Taxpayer bailout. Here we come. Take care.